What's up, Hokie Nation, and welcome into this edition of the Friday Q&A. Alongside our lead analyst and columnist, Chris Coleman, our director of media, Nick Brown, I'm your host, Carter Hill. Chris, it's been too long since we recorded. I had to hop on, so good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
It's been, month since I've been on a podcast with you, so
Is it real? Yeah, I guess
it's probably been a long time. It's been a long time. Let's get right into it. Robert Bateman is out today. This is the first question from Hokie SA. Is it zero excuses / NCAA tournament or bust for Virginia Tech men's basketball this season?
You know, I never like to put such a strict set of requirements on any individual team, but I think the way Mike Young talks about this team and the way the players have talked about this team, it kind of seems like that's their expectation for sure. Not that it's not their expectation in any other year, but, you know, when he made his basketball hire or his coaching hire to replace Kevin Giltner, before he said, I need to make the hire or the promotion, whatever it turns out to be, I need to make it based on this team. He said, we've got a really good team this year. I need to be thinking about this team, not necessarily about recruiting, not necessarily about the future. Seems like he's, putting it all in onto this particular team. And, the players, talking to them on Tuesday, they seem very confident. I was talking to Amani Hansberry, who was on that West Virginia team last year that was probably the first team out. They went 19-13 and 10-10 in the Big 12, probably maybe the first team or two out of the NCAA tournament. And he told me this year's team is a better roster. It's more versatile than the one he played at last year with West Virginia. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably the expectation at this point.
It's funny you mentioned team because I was listening to a podcast with Will Wade, NC State's coach, yesterday, and he talked about in today's day and age, it feels like you have to build a team, not a program.
Yeah. Do
you agree with that statement, do you think?
I think you have to build multiple teams before you get a chance to build a program.
Yeah.
I think if you can recruit some guys and keep them long-term, that's great. I like Tech's young core in the program right now with Tyler Johnson and Ben Hammond coming back. But at the same time, you do kind of have to redo it every year to a certain extent, and it's like that for almost all programs.
Next question comes from DJDVT. Will it severely limit our coaching pool if the head coach reports to the new GM, or do you think coaches may actually enjoy relenting some control they have over player personnel and dealing with everything else that comes their way?
That's a good question. Well, you have to think about it first. The head coach is going to be reporting to somebody either way. He's either going to be reporting to an athletic director or a GM. So there's going to be some oversight over him no matter what. It'll be interesting to see the flow chart of this at Virginia Tech. The way Bruce Arians phrased it on the Pat McAfee show the other day, Bruce said the first thing we've got to do is hire a GM and get him in charge of football. So my assumption is that technically the football coach will be reporting to the GM, and the GM will have control over, obviously the head coach will have input, but the GM would have control over like the player personnel department and probably negotiations with players, which I think is a good thing. So I don't think it's necessarily a turnoff. I think it's more about who the person is as opposed to who you're reporting. Who you're reporting to, because you're going to be reporting to somebody no matter what. If there was a GM in place that I knew or had a working relationship with, or just had a good reputation in the business, and throughout the process, if I got to know him and it felt like we could work well together, then I personally wouldn't have a problem with it at all if I were a head coach.
Okay. So you, just to clarify, if you're a head coach, if you're Virginia Tech, do you want the head coach reporting to the GM, or would you rather them reporting to a director of athletics?
I'm fine with either one.
Okay.
I like the idea of having a football guy in charge of the football program. I'll say that. Now, I have bigger questions about who the GM is going to ultimately report to. Is it going to be the athletic director, or is it going to be the school president? Because at Stanford, I think Andrew Luck is reporting to the school president. It kind of bypasses the athletic director. And I guess there are strengths and weaknesses of that. The weaknesses, like, what if the school president doesn't really – most school presidents are not going to understand athletics
football program.
As much as like an athletic director should. So for me – the ideal flow chart would be a GM reporting to a strong, decisive, modern athletic director who understands athletics and who understands football as well, but who's running the whole department. For me, that's the ideal situation.
Okay.
We'll just have to see how it works out at Tech, because it's not totally clear yet how that flow chart's going to work.
Okay. All right, from TH Hoop 3, what would you say are the major positive accomplishments during the Whit Babcock, Tim Sands era at Virginia Tech?
You mean with athletics?
With athletics.
Yeah, I mean, Sands is very much hands off, so I wouldn't really put him in this at all. But I think Whit has made some very good coaching hires. Obviously, he hired Buzz Williams. He hired Mike Young, and between those two guys, you've got an ACC title, a Sweet 16. When Tech made 5 straight NCAA tournaments, that was one of the top 10 longest streaks in the country, which is really, 12-year-old me never would have believed that Virginia Tech would make 5 NCAA tournaments in a row with a Sweet 16 and a conference title. He hired Kenny Brooks, who made a Final Four and won the ACC. Made a great softball hire, and Pete Demore, who's made super regionals a couple times and is a perennial NCAA tournament team. Elevating Tony Roby to head coach was a great job. So, I think he hasn't been great with football, obviously, but he gave us some things in some other sports that we've never had before. Now, I guess the counter argument to that is I think those coaches are capable of doing even better. I think if the athletic department itself was streamlined better, like if they had a fully staffed Hokie club and things like that, I think maybe guys like Pete Demore and Tony Roby would be able to be in a position to do even better, right?
Yeah.
But I think from the basic standpoint, I think he's made very good hires for a lot of those sports.
All right, let's take a quick break and hear from one of our sponsors at First Bank and Trust Company.
Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
All right, and big thanks to our sponsors at First Bank and Trust Company. One more question from Borat from Costanza. You look at the basketball program as a whole. What do you think about Whit Babcock's impact specifically on basketball during his time at Virginia Tech?
I think I'll always be appreciative of Whit for what he's done for the basketball program. We had no idea what this basketball program was capable of until we actually tried, because we had never tried before. And he's the first athletic director to really go all in on basketball. And I know last year wasn't as good as people hoped for, myself included, but I'm looking at the overall tenure. It was 8 consecutive postseason appearances for men's basketball, 5 NCAAs and 3 NITs, and that's never happened before. Tech had never made 2 NCAA tournaments, or more than 2 NCAA tournaments in a row before he got here. I always wanted to know how good Virginia Tech could be at basketball if they actually tried, and he gave us our answer, and that's something that, like me, as a longtime Virginia Tech basketball fan, will always be appreciative of. So that'll probably be what stands out from a positive standpoint. That'll be what stands out to me the most about his era. Not that his era is over yet. We'll see. Mm-hmm. But so far, for me, that's been the number one thing. And again, like that's something. I have had my issues with certain other things, but that's something I'll always give him credit for, and something I'll always be appreciative of.
Can you give me your ceiling for Tech men's basketball this season?
It's so hard to say because once you get into the NCAA tournament,
it's a while. Matchup based.
It's a matchup based thing. But I think with the right matchups, they should be capable of making a run. The issue is like how quickly can these guys get in tune with Mike Young's offensive system. The good thing is I think this is going to be a good defensive team. I think they've got a lot of length and they've got positional versatility. I think adding Hansberry really brings a level of toughness, pure toughness that they were lacking before. So there might be some offensive struggles, especially early as guys learn to play with each other. But I think defense will be there from day one. So I think they'll have a chance to make a run for sure. Just so much of it depends on matchups once you get there.
I could argue defensively and rebounding is more important than being able to shoot the 3. And I think Virginia, and everybody talks about, like in years past, they're like, Virginia Tech lives and dies by the 3. That is not going to be the case this year, and that's going to be fun to watch, I think.
Those 2 NCAA tournament teams that Mike Young had, they were outstanding defensive teams. They were 2 of the best defensive teams he's ever had. So, yeah, I mean, they could shoot the 3 ball. By the end of that season, they were rolling offensively. But, you got to play defense, too, because not every game your 3-point shot's going to be there. You're going to have off games offensively, but you can control your effort. You can control your defensive effort. You can control your rebounding. If you have an off day offensively, you can still win. I think last year and the last few years, if Tech wanted to win a game, they were going to have to win it 88-81 or something like that. They weren't capable of winning a 61-59 game against ACC competition for the most part. I'm sure there were a few of those in there, but not many. This year, this team is going to be much more capable of winning one of those rock fights if it comes to that.
Yeah. All right, Chris, have a good weekend. Appreciate it.
Yep, thanks.
For Chris Coleman, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill saying so long from Blacksburg. We'll talk to you very soon.